Welcome back to How to Practice Boundaries Using Astrology Part 3. In this video, we're going to be talking about your Mercury placement and how that reveals the most effective and successful way for you to communicate your boundaries in a way that's going to be sustainable and promote collaboration and support from the people that you're requesting your boundaries toward. If you haven't checked out my previous videos, please do so. In the other videos, I've talked about what it means to have Neptune, the planet that represents dissolving boundaries in every house. This is also because Neptune rules confusion. And so sometimes people have some confusion around what it is that they have boundary issues around and exactly how to go about resolving it or what the nature of that is. And so in the previous videos, I talked about what it means, like when you have Neptune in specific houses, it represents a specific area of your life where you're predisposed to having some boundary issues toward. And in this video, we're going to be talking about your Mercury placements and the most effective way to communicate your boundaries. This is especially useful because Neptune rules Pisces, and Pisces is represented by a fish that can't speak. And this is why it's known to be the sign that's the most vulnerable. It doesn't have arms to protect itself, legs to run away. And so there's a lot of openness, receptivity, trust. Pisces can be very deeply compassionate, and the openness allows for this generosity, this wisdom, and being able to be receptive, and it embodies all of the other signs. But on the other end of the spectrum, there can be some issues with boundaries. And so when you have a hard time being able to express that and create that boundary, using other areas of your chart is really beneficial, such as your Mercury placement. Now, this is an entire series. So in addition to the Neptune videos, in addition to this video, I'm going to be covering other things as well that you can take a look at, such as your third house, which is also about communication. And this is just an extra avenue and an extra layer that you can use, especially if your Mercury isn't in the best placement, if the aspects and the way that your Mercury expresses itself has some challenges that it triggers, then your third house placement can actually be a more effective way to express your boundaries. We're also going to be taking a look at how Virgo can support you. Because Virgo is the sign that's opposite of Pisces, whenever you're dealing with a specific challenge associated with a specific sign, when you look at the opposite sign, it's going to have the opposite impact. So if you're struggling with boundaries, which is very Pisces, you can take a look at Virgo, which is very strategic, articulate, it's very solution oriented. It resolves problems and challenges, and this is why Virgo is also known to be a little bit more guarded, because it has boundaries in comparison and in contrast to Pisces. We're also going to be taking a look at Saturn, because Saturn is literally the planet of boundaries. So your Saturn placement can also be very supportive as well. There's a lot of areas in your chart and a lot of different ways to look at this, and this free series is going to be giving you guys a lot of wonderful resources so that you can use this on your own. If you'd like a personalized reading, I do have one specifically designed for empaths and highly sensitive people called You're a Badass Energy Bitch. And in this reading, I'm going to be covering exactly what challenges that you're facing, why you're facing it, what karmic reasons behind these challenges, why they exist, how you can redirect, how you can resolve this energy, the karmic lessons you're meant to experience, the best way for you to communicate, what you can do to make it effective, sustainable, what are some challenges that are going to come up, what are some ways that you can redirect it, what are some things that you can do to really strengthen your boundaries, what are some changes that have to occur, and things of that nature. Now, let's get into this specific video where we're going to be talking about how Mercury is used to support you in your specific boundaries. Because this is a general reading, not everything is going to apply, but there's a lot of valuable info here. So before you even start thinking about your Mercury placement in the different signs, you want to think about the mindset and the intention behind why you're communicating something. Mercury is the only planet that supports everyone. So, don't think of it as it's you against other people that you have to create boundaries against, because then that puts you in this opposing field. Think of it more like, hey, there's me, there are people in my life, and there's this boundary issue. And think of it like you and the other people in your life both coming together to build this boundary that's going to be beneficial for everyone involved. Okay, and that way you take a more supportive, collaborative, resolution-oriented approach that's going to be beneficial for everyone involved. And interestingly enough, I actually learned this mindset specifically from a Libra sun and moon. And what's interesting is, in addition to Pisces, I've noticed a lot of recovering people pleasers have strong Libra in their chart. And this is because Libra is the the sign that wants to promote, to keep the peace. And so for that reason, sometimes, there might be some people pleasing, some pushover behavior that kind of takes effect. And so this was someone who is using this positive, harmonious, people pleasing approach to essentially get what you want that's harmonious for everyone involved. So what she was telling me is, she said, people innately want to support you because it makes them feel good. And that's true. There's been a lot of studies anthropologically that talks about the value and the benefit of altruism. And so when you communicate to people the support that you want, that someone can offer, you put the ball in their court. It no longer makes people feel like, oh, like so-and-so has created this boundary against me and that's disruptive to my life because I've gotten used to it. Or they're telling me that I'm doing something wrong and I'm getting triggered and I'm feeling insecure and my ego is kicking in, and it can get people to be defensive. But if you tell people, hey, this would really support me, that puts people in a different mindset, and people in your life are going to be like, oh, I want to support you. I can do that. It makes them feel like empowered, that they can contribute to something, that'll make them feel good, that'll make you feel good. And so it's a really good mindset to be in. So regardless of the flavor, the approach, whether you are more direct or subtle, try to communicate it in a way where you're letting people know, like, hey, this would really support me. Can you help me with that? And that's also a very Geminian approach. Mercury rules Gemini, which is very collaborative. And so that's a really good way to use your Mercury placement as well. But going in order, if you have Mercury in Aries, this is an interesting placement because oftentimes people with this placement are very direct. You can rely on people with Mercury in Aries to really mean what they say, unless they have other planets or other influences that are changing this energy. And yet there can still be people who really struggle with boundaries when you have Mercury in Aries. And this is because your sun can be in Pisces. Mercury can only be 28 to 29 degrees away from the sun. So for example, I know someone who's a Pisces sun and moon with Mercury in Aries. When he says something, you can rely on him to be very honest, to mean what he says. He's very direct, but it doesn't mean he's necessarily going to sit there and say, hey, this is a boundary that I have. So that is something to be aware of, but directly saying, hey, this would help me out. When it comes to having Mercury in Aries, you want to be direct. And it's something that you probably naturally do anyways, but if you are a Pisces sun, it may be a little bit more difficult for you to express that boundary. So it's something that you might want to and need to practice, particularly if you're walking around, you're exercising, because Mercury is walking, Aries is about physical activity and stuff like that. Practicing expressing your boundaries, letting people know directly what it is that you want. That can be, and being very direct, being succinct, which is kind of natural to your communication style, but focusing on the specific topic around boundaries can be really beneficial for you. Now, if you have Mercury in Taurus, it's important to know that every sign and every house dissolves the energy of the previous sign in the previous house. So while Aries can be very impulsive and direct and stuff, Taurus is going to be a little bit more leisurely and slower paced. Now, actually going back to Aries really quickly though, if you find that the way that you're communicating is causing too much of a conflict because you're being too direct, in addition to what I recommended, letting people know what would help you so that people don't feel like, they're being attacked, because your Mercury is in a Mars sign, so it can be sometimes combative. And so you can kind of shuffle between operating from, if you have your sun in Pisces and being passive, to all of a sudden being direct. That contrast can be really difficult for the people in your life to kind of figure out. And if you find that this is a challenge, going back to what I said about using the opposite sign to balance things out, if your Mercury is in Aries and people are feeling like you're just being too selfish or too self-centric or something, like you're manifesting some of the more negative qualities, use some of that Libra energy. and talk to someone one-on-one, try to be harmonious and have more of a communication, and consider the other person as you're communicating, but still honor the fact that you have a direct and explicit way of delivering your content, and just be honest about that and get into the practice of saying that. There's something called scripting, where basically when you want to express something, if you haven't had practice doing it, and you're not unlearning and relearning new habits, you're likely to go back to the same habit and the same speech that you gave previously. So with every sign that I'm recommending, I would suggest that you take the time to really practice saying these boundaries on your own, so that you get used to it, so that by the time you say it with other people, you're more confident and you feel more empowered and it's more natural to you. Whether you're writing it out and you're saying it to yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror, just saying this consistently, so it just becomes a natural part of you, because you need to feel aligned and you need to feel the truth in what you're requesting in order to garner other people's approval and contribution in this. Like, that's really going to make a tremendous difference. So now going into Mercury being in Taurus. Now with this placement, wherever Taurus is in your chart, the energy moves the slowest. So when it comes to your vocabulary, whatever communication style that you're used to may be the thing that you maintain. So it may be harder for you to shift out of this space and tell someone like, hey, this is something that would really help me out. This is something that would make me feel better. But Taurus is the most earth sign, because it's an earth sign and it's a fixed sign. It's very consistent. It's very much about being practical. It's about managing your resources. So think about practically why you want the boundaries that you want. How is it going to benefit you? How is it going to serve you? How is this going to be a resource for you? And think about the five senses. Like, how do you want it to taste? What does it sound like? What are people saying to you? What are you hearing? How is it making you feel in your body when people are telling you these things? And these are going to be the things, like when you anchor yourself into the sensation, into the human experience, how it's going to benefit you, it's going to be easier for you to express these things. And with Taurus, it takes a little bit of time, so you kind of want to pace yourself. Taurus is a maintaining energy. So if you want to practice giving this speech with things related to your five senses, like if you're listening to music, for example, or if you're using essential oils, do something where it's like it's connecting to your five senses as you express to yourself first. Like, because it's an earth sign, it's more introverted. When it comes to fire and air signs, these are more extroverted sign, and it's more communicative. But earth and air signs are more about your inner world. With earth signs, you want to find practical reasons. With water signs, you want to find the emotional motivation and the feeling behind it. So with your earth placement, think about why you want this, how this is going to be beneficial, how this is going to support you, and practice saying that. And this is going to help you to eventually get to a place where you communicate to other people what your boundaries are. Now, if you have Mercury in Gemini, this is a good placement, because Mercury is in its home sign. It has rulership here. So you're able to communicate with others. The only thing to be concerned about with this placement is that because Gemini is represented by twins, this can cause some, and it's a mutable sign, there can be a lot of like mutability involved. It's literally the most like airy mutable sign. It's an air, it's a mutable sign. And so it can kind of go back and forth, because a Mercury in Gemini can see different sides to things. Mercury is the messenger between God and the humans, and Mercury was able to see different sides, both sides of the perspective, and so it can kind of lead to fibbing. And this is why Mercury isn't known to be, specifically Gemini, a planet of integrity. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you can't be ethical or anything like that, but it's because of this mutability. So you want to make sure that you're not falling prey to that susceptibility and stuff, and just get really clear on why you want to have these boundaries, and get curious about it. And when you're communicating to other people, do it in a very playful, discovering sort of a way. Be very inviting and communicative. It's not so much like, say, with the Leo, where like you have the mic, you are on stage, everybody is listening to you, other people that are having this conversation is playing more of an audience role. With Gemini, it's very much about making this kind of a connection. It represents toddlers, so you want to have that like fun collaboration when you're talking about your boundaries, but do it in a way that's playful and witty and enjoyable. The only thing I would say guarding against is to make sure that you don't get two-sided and you don't go back and forth. So this is why talking with yourself can be really beneficial, because you can maybe practice, seeing yourself go back and forth, kind of falter and stuff, and find that like that centering for you. But the thing with Gemini, what's important for you to know is that like if your end game is to be here, this is where your boundaries are, okay? If you're having conversations with other people, theoretically, you might think you're trying to get the conversation and the people to come here, which makes sense, right? But being a Gemini, you're naturally mutable. You naturally move around. That's okay. Don't try to control the conversation to go here constantly, because that's not sustainable. You're the most mutable sign. You're air sign. That's not going to work for you. Allow people to move around and trust that when they do that, the conversation will go back. Just remember what your end game is. That's really the biggest thing for you with Mercury in Gemini. Now, if you have Mercury in Cancer, this is a very emotional, watery placement and stuff. So when it comes to expressing your boundaries, you want to think about your emotions, and if you can, try to find a way to be nurturing, maternal, and add emotional elements in the way that you communicate, because it's going to engage people and in what you're asking of them. But also think about within yourself, how do you want to feel? What inspires you? Now with Cancer, wherever Cancer is in your chart, it's really important that you get started and initiate when you feel ready. Otherwise, it's premature, it's not sustainable. That's something that's very important, because for Cancer, you need to learn to feel comfortable. Okay, we live in this world that says, feel the discomfort and do it anyways, just do it. That's not sustainable for a Cancer. Okay, so you may take some time before you sit there and express your boundaries. Don't make yourself wrong. Okay, prepare yourself. Think about why you want to have boundaries, how that's going to make you feel. What thoughts are going in your head? How do you want to articulate it? What's the mindset? Think about those things, and also take the time to think about what beliefs around boundaries have you inherited from your family and mother that is influencing you, and maybe study that. Maybe look through some of those things. You can also do that specifically with Gemini as well, related to your childhood. What did you learn in your childhood that have influenced the way you communicate and your thoughts around boundaries? So particularly with Mercury in Cancer, while it's taking you time to actually get ready to prepare for things, study it, learn to feel comfortable. And Mercury is about habits. Create habits and practices within yourself where you are creating boundaries within you, because Cancers are represented by a crab. So you've got this soft inner shell, but you've got this you got the soft fleshy meat, and you have this hard outer shell. So you basically want to operate out of that space. So practice it within your home environment, because as a water sign, it starts with you first, and then you move that out of you. So think about that and try to express yourself in a way that's more emotional. This may be difficult if you have placements if your Mercury has challenging aspects and stuff, or if your moon has challenging aspects, but this is part of your journey. Mercury is about what you have to learn in this incarnation. So, and with it being in a water sign, it's very karmic. You're here to learn how to communicate in an emotionally nurturing, sort of a supportive way. And if you have challenging aspects with this placement, it may show up as very mama bear, very aggressive, kind of hostile, and that's something for you to correct. So that's something that you can practice in your own time before you start expressing these boundaries to other people. Now, if you have Mercury in Leo, I talked about this just a little bit. This is sort of like you being in the spotlight because you're a performer. And so think of it like if you're scared to express your boundaries, practice at home as though you're on stage and you are letting people know what you want to know in a way that's engaging, that's captivating, and stuff. Communicate in a way that gives you confidence. Think about these things when the sun is out, because your Leo rules the sun. And so when you are out and the sun is out, you can have more connection to that truth energy. It can be very revitalizing. The sun is about self-expression, so you can really kind of draw on that energy. But communicate in a way that makes you feel confident. Express yourself using your creative intelligence and brilliance, because that's what the sun represents. That's what Leo represents, and you want to use that energy. The more you do that, the more people are going to be inclined to listen to you. If you try to kind of be in the shadows and hide and stuff, unless you have you have Saturn here too, it's going to block people, and it's going to make it hard for people to really be truly receptive to you. So really take the time to think about how this is going to help you. And what's interesting is that Leo is the planet that's often associated with selfishness, and it's a little lazy to just say that this is the sign of narcissism, because there are so many more indicators, and you have to look at your whole chart. But narcissism is something that relates to Leo, and what's really that I find that to be interesting, because Leo is also the ruler of a kingdom, and it's a fire sign. It's very protective. It's looking out for everyone. So when you are operating out of your highest manifestation with your Mercury and Leo, you're not being self-centric. It's not just about what you want. It's about how can you help everyone in your kingdom, so to speak. Like, what can you do for your people when you are at your best, when you are planning and expressing yourself in a way that feels good for you? It supports and protects everyone. So think about what that looks like for you. Okay, think about what gives you the most confidence. How does the idea of expressing boundaries make you feel good? How can you go about expressing that? And say it in a commanding way, like not in a way that's like hierarchical and like, disrespectful to others and treating others like they're your helpers and they're below you. That's not what I mean. But understand that Leo has a commanding presence. Honor that. It's different from, say, like having Mercury in Pisces, which is meant to be a little bit more quieter, subtler, more passive and stuff. And you're meant to do that. We all go through different incarnations with different placements because we're meant to learn things. In this incarnation, if you have Mercury and Leo, it's because you are supposed to learn the authority and power that you have in the way that you communicate. So use this in a way that is optimistic, that is generous, that speaks truth, that makes people feel good. Don't just think about how this is supporting you, but express yourself in a way that makes other people feel good. Another thing is that, like, maybe you can do a performance. If you're a singer, a musician, an actor, if you are on stage, if you're a comedian, this is a great way to use this placement as a way to kind of process your boundaries, but also like giving back and creating art for others. This is an absolutely wonderful placement for that. Now, if you have Mercury in Virgo, Mercury in Virgo is in rulership similar to Mercury in Gemini. And the thing is, Virgo is about, while Gemini is more fun and collaborative and curious, Virgo has a more serious tone. It represents preteens, it represents work and open enemies, health issues, challenges, all of these stuff that you are here to resolve. So when you have Mercury here, this could also be a vocation for you where you are actually using in your job like practical ways to help resolve challenges. So when this happens, Virgo can be very critical because it sees the problems so that it can correct it. So make sure that you don't get into this space where you're just criticizing and you're in a loop, because that's not going to help you, however honest and true it may be. So think about, what is the problem? How can I correct it? Who do I need to talk to? What's the problem? Why is this a problem? Where is this a problem? How can I fix this? Who can support me? What is the solution? Where can I resolve this? When can I resolve this? How can I resolve this? Those are the mindset that you want to take. And Virgo is very much about repetition. So write it down, speak it out. Be logical about it, be practical, apply it into your day-to-day habits, because that's what Virgo Mercury is all about. So creating a habit around this, creating boundaries, and doing it in a way that's practically supportive. If you have, like, for example, Mercury and Pisces, like taking a more less linear, tangible, measurable approach and being more esoteric is going to work with that energy more. But with Virgo, you want more specificity, more detail, more precision. You want to have a starting point and an ending point. You want to measure progress. This is something that's really important for you. So do what you got to do in order to assure that. Okay, and think of yourself as like Virgo is a supporter. So think about it from the perspective of, by creating boundaries to the people in my life, how am I supporting them? How is this a benefit for them? How is this supporting me? How is this helping me with my karmic lessons? How is this going to help my schedule, my day-to-day life, my health? These are the questions that you want to explore, and you want to practice the different dialogues that match what sign your Mercury is in. So in this video, I'm just going to be talking about what it means to have Mercury in Aries till Mercury in Virgo. And then in my next video, I'm going to be talking about how to practice boundaries using astrology based on your Mercury placements from the other signs. So we're going to be looking at Libra to Pisces. Okay, thanks so much for watching this video. And again, if you'd like a personalized reading on this, you can go to my website and schedule an appointment for me, as well as taking a look at my other services. But for now, I hope that this video has been helpful, and have a wonderful day. Bye.